Your name has nothing to do with who you are. Your name has nothing to do with who you are. You were given your name before you were old enough to understand what a name even was. Someone looked at you when you were born and decided, this is what we'll call you. And eventually, you learned to turn your head when you heard it. You learned that the sound was pointing toward you. Then something strange happened. You stopped thinking of your name as something that points to you and started thinking of it as you. This is me. But is it? If someone called you by a completely different name tomorrow, would you disappear? Of course not. You would still wake up in the same body. You would still have memories. You would still experience thoughts. You would still be aware that you exist. The name would change, but something would remain. And that tiny distinction opens a much bigger question. What exactly is this me you've been carrying around your entire life? Because your name is only the beginning. After your name came more labels. Your family, your nationality, your religion, your language, your culture, your personality, your intelligence, your appearance, your achievements, your failures, your relationships, your social status, your career, your opinions, your political beliefs, your likes, your dislikes, and eventually, all of these things were collected into one enormous psychological file. This is who I am. And you probably don't even realize how much of your identity is made from these descriptions. Someone asks, who are you? And you immediately start listing things. I'm a doctor. I'm a student.
I'm introverted. I'm ambitious.
I'm Indian. I'm successful.
I'm unsuccessful.
I'm a good person. I'm an anxious person.
I'm funny.
I'm not confident. I'm the kind of person who... Notice something. Almost every answer is a description. But there's a question underneath all of them. Who is the one being described? Imagine you meet someone for the first time. You ask their name. They tell you. Then you ask what they do. They tell you. You ask where they're from. They tell you. You ask what they like. They tell you. After 10 minutes, you feel like you know them. But do you? You've collected information about them. You know their labels. You know their biography. You know their preferences. You know their history. But none of those things are actually the person. They're descriptions of the person. And there's a massive difference. Think about a photograph of an ocean. You can look at the photograph and say, that's the ocean. But the photograph isn't the ocean. You can write the word ocean on a piece of paper. The word isn't the ocean. You can describe the ocean for 10 hours. Salt water, waves, blue, deep,
First.
but none of those words are the actual ocean. They're representations. And your identity works in a similar way. Your name isn't you. Your biography isn't you. Your personality isn't you. Your achievements aren't you. They're descriptions. Useful descriptions. Sometimes important descriptions. But still, descriptions. Now imagine something being taken away. Let's say you lose your job. For some people, that doesn't just feel like losing employment. It feels like losing themselves. Because somewhere along the way, I have a job, quietly became, I am my job. Then imagine losing a relationship. It isn't simply, this relationship ended. It becomes, who am I now? Because the relationship had become part of the identity. Now imagine losing social status, losing money, failing an exam, moving to another country, changing your beliefs, changing your appearance, getting older. All of these things can shake you, and some of them should. Loss hurts, failure hurts, change can be painful. But underneath the pain is an interesting fact. Something in you survives the change. Think about yourself 10 years ago. You probably had completely different opinions, different interests, different fears, different friends. Maybe a completely different dream. You probably believed things that you no longer believe. You probably thought certain people would always be in your life. They aren't. You probably thought certain things would make you happy. Maybe they didn't. Your body changed. Your face changed. Your voice changed. Your circumstances changed. Your personality may have changed. Your beliefs changed. And yet, when you look back at that person, you naturally say, that was me. Interesting. If so much changed, what exactly makes the person from 10 years ago and the person sitting here now the same me? Maybe you say, my memories. Okay, but memories change too. You don't remember every moment of your life. Some memories disappear. Some become distorted. Some events you once considered incredibly important become almost meaningless. And sometimes you remember something completely differently from another person who experienced the same event. So if your memories can change, are your memories really the thing you are? Maybe you say, my body, but your body is constantly changing. The cells, the skin, the blood, the hair, the muscles, the organs. Even the body you had as a child is radically different from the body you have now. And yet you still say, that was me. So the body changes, but the sense of being the same person remains. Maybe it's your thoughts, but thoughts change even faster. One moment you're happy, the next you're irritated, then worried, then excited, then bored, then calm. If you were every thought that appeared, you would become a completely different person every few seconds. But something seems to notice all of these changes. And that brings us somewhere much deeper. Think about the last time you had a completely different opinion from the one you have today. Maybe you once believed, I'll never leave this place, and then you did. Maybe, I'll never like that person, and eventually you did. Maybe, I could never do that, and then you did. At the time, the belief felt like reality. You didn't think, this is just a temporary thought. You thought, this is what I believe. But beliefs changed, and you remained. That's important. Because if a belief can change, then the belief cannot completely define the one who experiences it. The same thing applies to emotions. You have been devastated before. You have been incredibly happy before. You've been angry. You've been lonely. You've been confident. You've been insecure. You've been hopeful. You've been completely lost. And every time, the emotional state eventually changed. But something remained present through all of them. This is where the question becomes uncomfortable. If your thoughts change, your emotions change, your body changes, your relationships change, your beliefs change, your circumstances change, your name can change, your job can change, your social status can change, your personality can even change. What is left? What is there before you describe yourself? Before you say, I'm successful. Before, I'm a failure. Before,
I'm attractive.
before,
I'm ugly.
before,
I'm intelligent.
before,
I'm stupid.
before,
I'm spiritual.
before, I'm not spiritual. Before every sentence that begins with, I am. What is there? Try something right now. Don't answer verbally. Just notice. You're sitting somewhere. Maybe you're holding your phone. Maybe you're lying down. Maybe you're listening to this while walking. There are sounds around you. There are sensations in your body. There are thoughts moving through your head. Maybe you're thinking about what you need to do later. Maybe you're judging this video. Maybe you're remembering something. Maybe you're wondering where this is going. All of that is happening. But here's the strange part. You can notice it. You can notice the sound. You can notice the sensation. You can notice the thought. You can even notice yourself becoming distracted. So ask, what is noticing? Don't rush to answer. Because the moment you give it a label, you've created another description.
I'm consciousness. I'm awareness.
I'm the soul. I'm the observer. Maybe, but those are still words. And the question goes deeper. What are you before the answer? This isn't supposed to become another identity. That's the trap. You can spend years trying to escape ordinary identity, only to create a spiritual identity.
I'm awakened. I'm conscious.
I'm more evolved. I understand reality. Now you've simply built another costume. The ego can wear a business suit, can wear a meditation robe, can call itself spiritual, can read philosophy, it can talk about consciousness for hours, and still be doing the exact same thing, creating a picture of itself, and then defending that picture. So self-realization isn't necessarily collecting a better description. It may involve seeing through the need for one. Think about social media. You carefully construct an image, the best photo, the right caption, the right music, the right opinions, the right lifestyle, and eventually, you start managing your own identity. You aren't simply living. You're watching yourself live. How do I look? How am I perceived? What does this say about me? Does this make me seem successful? Does this make me interesting? You become both the person and the person managing the image of the person. And that can become exhausting because an image always needs maintenance. If you build your identity around being successful, you become terrified of failure. If you build it around being intelligent, you become terrified of looking stupid. If you build it around being attractive, you become terrified of aging. If you build it around being liked, you become terrified of rejection. If you build it around being independent, you become ashamed of needing help. Every identity contains something it needs to protect, and whatever you desperately need to protect can eventually control you. That's why losing an identity can feel strangely liberating. Imagine someone who has spent their entire life trying to be the successful one. They need everyone to know they're progressing. They compare themselves constantly. Someone gets ahead, and they feel threatened. Someone fails, and they feel secretly relieved. Their entire emotional world revolves around a role. Then one day, something happens. They lose the position, and initially it destroys them. But after months of rebuilding, they discover something unexpected. They are still here. They can still laugh. They can still love. They can still experience beauty. They can still wake up and watch the sunrise. They can still have a conversation. They can still exist. The identity collapsed, but the person didn't. And sometimes life forces us to discover this because we wouldn't voluntarily question it. The same thing can happen in relationships. You might think, I am their partner. Then the relationship ends. Suddenly, who am I? But before you became their partner, you existed. Before they entered your life, you existed. And after they leave, you still exist. The relationship was real. The love may have been real. The pain may be real. But the label was never the entirety of you. You were something before the relationship, and you remain something after it. This doesn't make relationships meaningless. It makes them more beautiful, because you don't have to turn another person into the foundation of your existence. You can love them without needing them to define you. And perhaps this is why the question, who am I, can become so fascinating. Because every answer you give can be questioned. I'm a doctor. What happens if you stop practicing? I'm a son. That describes a relationship.
I'm intelligent.
That's a judgment.
I'm introverted.
That's a personality description. I'm successful. That's a measurement. I'm Indian. That's a nationality.
I'm spiritual.
That's an identity. I'm this body. Your body is changing. I'm my thoughts. Your thoughts constantly change. I'm my memories. Your memories are incomplete. So, what are you? Maybe the purpose isn't to find a final sentence. Maybe the point is to notice the space before the sentence. Because the mind loves answers. It wants something solid, something it can hold, something it can say, that's me. But perhaps the deepest realization begins when you become comfortable enough to not immediately fill that space with an answer. You simply notice, I am here, before the biography, before the achievement, before the failure, before the opinion, before the story, before the label. There is simply the fact that you are experiencing. And that fact is strangely difficult to describe. You don't have to believe any particular spiritual philosophy for this to be useful. You can approach it psychologically. Your identity is partly a model your brain creates, takes memories, experiences, feedback, relationships, cultural expectations, achievements, failures, and creates a story. This is who I am. That story is useful. You need some sense of continuity to function. You need to know your name. You need to know your responsibilities. You need to know what you believe. You need some idea of who you are in the world. The problem isn't having an identity. The problem is forgetting that it is a model. A map is useful, but you shouldn't confuse the map with the territory. Your identity is a map of you. It isn't the entire territory. And this changes how you relate to failure. Instead of, I failed, therefore I'm a failure, you can say, I experienced failure. Instead of,
I'm anxious.
you can say,
I'm experiencing anxiety.
instead of, I'm a loser, you can say, I'm going through a period where things aren't working. Instead of, I'm not good enough, you can ask, according to whom? That tiny change in language can create distance. And distance creates possibility. Because if something is your identity, you feel trapped by it. But if something is an experience, it can change. So perhaps the next time you look in the mirror, don't immediately ask, do I look good? Don't ask, am I attractive enough? Don't ask, am I successful enough? Just look. Notice the face. Notice the body. Notice the thoughts that immediately appear. Notice how quickly the mind begins describing what it sees. Too thin. Too old. Not attractive. Looking tired. Getting better. Getting worse. Watch it, because even the person judging the reflection is part of the story. And underneath the entire conversation, there is simply the fact that you are here. The same thing can be done with your thoughts. When the mind says, I'm behind in life, don't immediately fight it. Ask, who is saying that? When it says, I'm not enough, ask, is that a fact or a description? When it says, this is who I am, ask, is this actually who I am? Or is this simply the story I've become accustomed to telling? You don't need to destroy the story. You don't need to become someone without an identity. You simply stop worshiping the description. Because your name is useful. Your personality is useful. Your history is useful. Your career is useful. Your beliefs are useful. Your identity is useful. But they're tools for navigating life. They're not the totality of your existence. And when you confuse the description with the reality, you begin defending the description. You spend your life proving that you are intelligent, proving that you're successful, proving that you're attractive, proving that you're right, proving that you're important, proving that you're a good person. And underneath all that proving, there may be a much quieter question. What if I don't need to prove that I deserve to exist? That is where this becomes more than philosophy. Because imagine waking up tomorrow without needing to constantly maintain an image of yourself. You could still pursue success, but failure wouldn't destroy your identity. You could still love someone, but losing them wouldn't mean losing yourself. You could still improve your body, but you wouldn't have to hate the body you have now. You could still learn, but you wouldn't need to prove that you're intelligent. You could still become better, but you wouldn't need to believe that the person you are today is unacceptable. Improvement becomes something you do, not something you need in order to justify your existence. And that's a massive difference. Maybe self-realization isn't discovering some extraordinary person hiding inside you. Maybe it's gradually seeing that the person you've been trying so hard to construct was never the whole story. The name isn't you. The biography isn't you. The achievements aren't you. The failures aren't you. The thoughts aren't you. The emotions aren't you. The roles aren't you. They're things that appear within your life. Some stay for decades. Some stay for minutes. Some disappear without warning. And somehow, through all of that, there is still this mysterious fact. You are here. Before you describe yourself, you are here. Before you succeed, you are here. Before you fail, you are here. Before someone loves you, you are here. After someone leaves, you are here. Before you know what you believe, you are here. And perhaps that's why the deepest question isn't, who am I? Because every answer becomes another label. The deeper question is, what am I before I answer? Don't rush to solve it. Just notice the question. Because maybe self-realization doesn't begin when you finally discover the perfect description of yourself. Maybe it begins when you stop confusing the description with the reality. And for the first time, you stop trying so desperately to become someone and simply notice the strange, undeniable fact that you already are.